別に司会ってわけじゃないんですけど、さっきも紹介ありましたけど、去年も来た方はとか、毎年参加してるんでご存知かと思いますけども、去年からパール5の、開発責任者をパンピンをやっている、SysV Vincent さんがですね、パール 5.14 今年の最終手なんですけども、来年以降のこれ以降の 5.16 以降ですねの開発の、プランとかそういうことを話してもらいますので、じゃあお願いします。
おはようございます。And I'm very sorry, that is almost all of the Japanese I speak. So I should say, hi, I'm Jesse. As is very obvious, I'm an American. And Americans tend to speak very quickly, and we tend to use lots of strange expressions. And so there's a pretty good chance that when I'm talking, I won't make much sense. If you don't understand me, probably nobody understands me. And you should wave your arms and look at me like I'm crazy. Then I'll remember to try to slow down and explain more. And of course, I'm happy to talk more later, to explain things or talk about stuff. Just find me afterwards. So anyway, hi, I'm Jesse. I'm here to talk about Perl 5 and what's going to happen in the future. And of course, when you're talking about the future, especially when it's a free project made by volunteers, this is all hope and dream. I want it to be a promise, but to make it a promise, I need help. So who am I? I used to be the project manager for Perl 6, which meant that I helped Larry and Audrey and a bunch of other people try to figure out how to make Perl 6 happen. When I worked on Perl 6, this was the logo. Of course, the logo got more normal now, less crazy, and it's just a psychedelic butterfly. But these days, I don't touch Perl 6. I'm very excited about it and hope that someday it will be amazing. But these days, my hobby is that I am the Perl 5 Pumpking. So Perl 5, of course, is the camel we all know and love. These days, we get a lot of support out of the Perl Foundation. That's their logo, the onion. I don't understand the onion, Karen. But anyway, my job is to help Perl 5 be awesome. So I'm called the Pumpking because many years ago, we had no version control. And the only person allowed to make changes had to have an actual physical object. They were the guy who had the stuffed pumpkin. So that's why that's the name of the Perl role. But anyway, what is a pumpkin? If you know Python, you know this. Benevolent dictator for life. That's Guido. He is the guy who, for his life, or Python's life, I don't know which will last longer, is in charge. He is responsible for every decision-making thing in Python. In Perl, Larry has moved on from Perl 5, so I'm not a BDFL, benevolent dictator for life. I'm just a benevolent dictator. Or maybe I'm just a dictator. The job of the Pumpkin is to make decisions, to figure out what's happening, to make things happen. And usually, Perl operates by consensus. People know what the right thing is, and mostly talk about it and agree on things. And so the Pumpkin is really only important when people don't agree. So I get to make unpopular decisions. My job is not actually to do real engineering. The Pumpkin used to be the guy who knew every compiler and could fix anything on VMS or ZOS or the Amiga or Unix or Windows NT or Macintosh or anything. These days, the Pumpkin delegates real work. I write down things that we are already doing, mostly things like policy and process, so that everybody knows what we're doing and everybody knows how to do it. And as people come into the project and go out of the project, we don't have to take someone aside and say, here's how you do this and this and this. They can read the docs. My job is mostly to take people who are very worried and scared and upset and make them happy. In short, I'm a manager. Which leads to the question of, well, if the Pumpking isn't creating Perl, who does it? And the answer is that it's lots and lots of awesome people who make Perl. I've learned one thing from watching DHH and Ruby on Rails, and that is that the job of the project leader is to stand around and look pretty, and let other people do work. So who makes Perl? If your name is in Perl's authors file, and I see actually a few of you in the room today, you make Perl. If you have a CPAN module, you make Perl. You are amazing. You are wonderful, wonderful people. You are the people who make Perl. If you don't have your name in Perl's authors file, send a patch. Little patches are okay. If you don't have a module on CPAN yet, it's fun. It's worth it. You should do it. But I'm here today to talk about the future of Perl, not the existing Perl. So Perl has some rules. You've probably heard of Perl's rules, but I'm not talking about laziness, impatience, and hubris. I'm talking about these rules that have been in the Perl core since 1999. Rule 1. Rule 1 of Perl is that Larry is always right. Rule 2 of Perl is that Larry can change his mind. Even if he hadn't ever thought that he was right in the first place. So it should be very obvious, because I have no mustache, I'm not Larry. I'm not anywhere near as smart as Larry, and my shirts aren't anywhere near as loud as Larry. But the important thing here is that the rules, they're not just for Larry. Maybe they used to be, but they're not anymore. And the rules aren't just for me. I mean, I'm always right. And I'm always allowed to change my mind, because I'm also usually wrong. But the rules are also for Perl. Does that make sense to people? Rule 1, Perl is always right. We have another way of saying that. There's more than one way to do it. Rule 2, Perl is allowed to change its mind. Does that seem reasonable to people? I mean, we change our mind a lot. We change our mind all the time. We used to think that tied hashes were a good API. We used to think that formats were one of the most important parts of the language. We used to think that class DBI was the best way to talk to a database. The problem we run into is that when we change our mind, it hurts. It hurts a lot. And it causes problems. And so a lot of what I've been thinking about since I became Pumpking 2 years ago is how we can change our mind without hurting. It's all about not hurting. When I started 2 years ago, there is something that I would hear over and over and over again. It would show up at the top of Hacker News and Reddit. Python guys at conferences would come up to me and say, well, this is what they'd say. Perl's dead. It's all over. Why aren't you using a real language like PHP? Well, I guess you did get objects now, and you have something that's a little bit like CPAN. But over time, it was not just Perl's dead, but Perl's dead. And it started to get to this. Why don't you believe me? Perl's dead! They started getting scared that maybe Perl wasn't dead. But I haven't heard anyone tell me in a very long time that Perl is dead. It's really obvious that Perl is very alive. And it's alive in some kind of scary ways. People have started to say, well, where is Perl going? What is the future of Perl 5? Because it's very clear that Perl 6 is our sister. And Perl 6 has a future. And Perl 6 has a future that is different from Perl 5's, but that Perl 6, well, Perl 6 isn't going to kill Perl 5, just like Ruby isn't going to kill Perl 5, and Python isn't going to kill Perl 5, and JavaScript isn't going to kill Perl 5, and Dart isn't going to kill Perl 5, and Go isn't going to kill Perl 5. But Perl 5 has to have somewhere to go. And people really don't know where we're going. The other problem we've been running into is people look at Perl 5 and say, but I just learned 5.12. Now 5.14 is out, and it has more stuff. People are saying, what did you do to regular expressions? There are so many flags. Why are there so many flags? I don't need a flag for Latin 1, for ASCII really, for Unicode, maybe we have too many flags. One of the other things that has been very popular to say in the Perl community lately is that we misnamed Smart Match. We should have called it Psychotic Match. And, you know, so these are things we need to deal with. One of the other questions I get a lot, now that Perl 5 is very clearly not dead, is, can't we give it a new name? I'll talk, if we have time at the very end, I'll talk a little bit about what I would need in order to give Perl 5 a different name. One of the problems that I personally have run into is that people have said, well, I don't see a vision for Perl 5. Where are you going? I see that you have releases now, but they just kind of keep going. And the problem wasn't that I lacked a vision for Perl 5. It was that I knew what would happen when I started talking about a vision for Perl 5. And it was not a pretty sight. I was very, very scared of saying, here's where I think Perl 5 should go. Because, you know, 2 years ago, if I came out and said, here's what we should do with Perl 5, I would have had everybody in this room laughing and laughing, and nobody would have listened to anything I would have said. It wasn't important that we put out a new release of Perl. Or sorry, it wasn't important that we have a plan for somewhere to go, because there was no way to get there. It took a lot of work to put out a release. It took over a year to put out a 0.1 release. And it had taken over 5 to put out a 0.0 release. In the past year, just 1 year, we've had 5 stable releases of Perl 5. We've had 12 development releases of Perl 5. Basically, every month, on the 20th of the month, a development release comes out. Every 3 months, a stable point release comes out. The most recent one came out in September. It's your fault, right?
Yeah.
Rick, could I have brief applause for Rick, who put out the most recent stable release of Perl 5? So yeah, that's pretty awesome. It used to be that when we decided, okay, it's time to put out a new release of Perl 5, it took 3 weeks. That was 3 weeks of release and 3 engineer weeks of release engineering. And we made the guy who had my job do it. Release engineering is boring and not actually very easy. These days, it takes less than a day to put out a release. We have all the steps written down in order. And every month, a different person does it. So nobody gets tired of doing releases, so I won't do the next one. And because we have a different person do it every month, we know that the instructions work. We know that the documentation is right, which is huge. Many of the release engineers are new committers who've never before had a commit bit to Perl 5. And that means that we've been adding new committers to the Perl core regularly. So I think when I started, there were 15 or 16 people who could commit to Perl. We've doubled that. And the best thing is that it hasn't caused the apocalypse. New versions of Perl, they don't suck worse. Some of the new committers they don't just do the release and leave. They stick around and apply patches and improve documentation and fix hard bugs. It's pretty cool. So that's kind of cool, and that was the first step. The first step was making it possible for us to release Perl. And it took a little bit. But now that we can do it, now it's time for me to talk about my vision for Perl. I'm going to make two statements, and these are the basis of how I'm thinking about everything, and I don't think, well, you'll see them. If we put out a new version of Perl 5, existing software, to the best of our abilities, should keep working. That's actually been true since 1999. That's been written down in documentation. This one is the one that we haven't been quite so strong about saying this is what must happen. Old Perl shouldn't stop new Perl. It should not be the case that broken old bits of Perl stop us from being able to get to the future. Both of these lead to this rather crazy statement. It's important that we be able to make mistakes. And that's important because I know we're going to make mistakes. And I know we're going to make mistakes because of things like smart match. We know that we do this. And so the important thing, the thing we need to figure out is how to recover from mistakes. When I say mistakes, sometimes in Perl we also talk about sane defaults. So basically that Perl should start off behaving reasonably. And the problem is that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we were crazy. And what we thought was sane, not sane. So in 10 years, everything I'm saying, you'll know it was crazy. Other things for the future. Perl has gotten big. Perl is much, much bigger than it used to be. And of course, yeah, it's important that we have sane defaults. And that old sane defaults are mistakes. One of the things that I would really like to see is more of Perl 5 written in Perl 5. As a community, we're really good. Ooh, ominous, scary. As a community, we're really good at Perl 5. We have a lot of people in the audience who can write Perl 5. We have fewer amazing C hackers. And so the more of Perl 5 that we can actually write in Perl 5, the more awesome we can be. This used to be true. Perl ran everywhere. It ran on weird IBM EBCDIC machines. It ran on VAXs. It ran on 3B2s. It ran on your Atari ST. It ran on your PC. These days, Perl doesn't run everywhere. It should. So, as I keep repeating, Perl is allowed to change its mind. And right now, Perl changing its mind hurts a lot. It makes every one of us sad. It makes every one of us scared to upgrade. You know, if you have code that's running on 5.8.7 and has been running on 5.8.7 for 10 years, or sorry, how long is for 5 years, 8, you don't want to upgrade to 5.14 without testing, because you know you're going to break things. And the problem we run into is that when you run your code, you have no idea. When your code runs, it has no idea what Perl is going to be running it. If your code says that at the top, this is always the way to say, I need at least 5.14. I want a Perl who's 5.14 or newer. I know this won't work on 5.12. What you're basically saying is, I would love 5.14, 5.16, 5.18, whatever. And what might happen in a little while, in 8 years, I guess, is Perl showing up and saying, hi, I'm 5.30. Is your code ready for 5.30? That is not useful. And that's something that we need to change. What I would like people to start doing is declaring the version of Perl they expect. An exact version they expect. If you say 5.16, what it should mean is that you want Perl to try to be like 5.16. It should run code as close as possible to how 5.16 did it. It's just nice and polite. And so yeah, the semantics should be about the same. What that means is that if there's a new feature we add in 5.18, if you say use 5.16, that shouldn't be there. That feature just shouldn't appear to exist. And this is an important part of being able to evolve. This is the escape hatch. This is how we get rule 2. If you say, I want 5.16, to the best of our abilities, and we won't be perfect, you'll get 5.16. And wow, I keep saying the thing 2 slides later. So we're not perfect, but we can do a lot better than we did in 5.14 and 5.12 and 5.10. Breaking existing code is a bad thing, and we should do everything possible to avoid it, but it's going to happen some of the time. There is stuff we can't remove and still have Perl work at all. It's going to be hard work. It's going to be, well, almost impossible, but I know it's not impossible. After YAPC North America, when I first gave this talk, Doi, D-O-Y, Jesse Lurs, in the audience listened, and then went and coded up Smart Match, a new version designed by Rick, and the old version from the core as CPAN modules, and then made it possible at runtime to pick which one. So we can do this. Deprecation. These days, what we say is that Perl has a 1-year deprecation cycle. If we decide to remove a feature in, just after 5.14 comes out, in 5.16, your code will say, you run your code, if you use the feature, Perl will say, warning, using deprecated feature, blah, 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 blah. But then, the very next year in 5.18, just dies. Which sounded really nice. As a developer, only having to maintain crazy old stuff for 1 year sounded nice. Turns out, it's not so nice. Right now, the very few operating systems have 5.14 already. I think Ubuntu may. The latest OS X has 5.12 already. But because very few operating systems release every year, it means that you're going to go from works to dead with no middle part. But changing to declare what Perl you want by default makes this a lot easier. So if we can make it work in old code, we can just make new we can make it go away in the next release, which is awesome. But of course, there's stuff that we can't safely make conditional. There's some crazy that to take it out, we just have to take it and kill it. And so if there's something we do that to, the deprecation cycle needs to get longer. So right now, if there's a feature we're taking out, if the code says use v5.16 and we said it was gone in 5.16, we know the developer was designing for 5.16. If it says use 5.14, it should warn. Even if the code said use v5.14 or has no use statement, it should warn in 5.16, should warn in 5.18, it should be gone in 5.20. So we're talking about extending the deprecation cycle by a year for things that we can't actually emulate. So one of the interesting things we've been doing, we haven't just been taking old features out, we've been taking old modules out. There are some things that just don't need to be in the core. These Perl 4 era libraries, or things like text soundex. Things that they don't make sense as part of the core distribution for Perl 5. They do, of course, end up on CPAN, so you can still keep using them. The problem you run into is that lots of people write code, things like, say, CPAN minus, that are designed to have no non-core dependencies. They should just run with only stuff in the core. And when over time we start pulling things out of the core, that means things might break. And so the solution that we've been talking about for this is that we need to start shipping 2 different versions of the Perl core. So one of them we call Hotel California Perl. And so Hotel California Perl is, let's see, running for the door, check out anytime you'd like, but you can never leave. Any module that's ever been in the core should be in the release, the big release, the traditional core release. The other side of it, of course, is the times there a change in Perl. So this is Perl that contains only the little bits you need to be able to get to CPAN and get more modules. So it's thin and light. It maybe only has one CPAN client. It has CPAN, not also CPAN Plus, but you could install that from CPAN. And so this is the Bootstrappable Perl. So this is the Perl core distribution that has only the most important things you need to use Perl and to be able to get everything else. One of the reasons that we need this is that some Linux distributions have started talking about getting rid of Perl from their core release. Because all that extra crazy stuff in Perl, that's a couple megabytes. Which, when you have a 50 megabyte OS image, that's actually some space. And so they want thin a Perl as possible. The other thing is that when you have as thin a Perl as possible, it's easier to maintain. So there's work going on right now to make it possible to take any CPAN module, put it in a directory in a release of the core, and then when you build Perl, it will install that module. So that also means that it will be easier to start making your own Perl distribution with a bunch of modules to install it automatically. So, you know, if anyone remembers Plaque from a few years ago and the, how many? 120 modules it needed? Could distribute Perl and all of Plaque, or Perl and all of Gifty, or Perl and all of RT. And it could be easy and nice. So one of the other problems, of course, is that Perl is a very big language. There are nice thin languages that are small and skinny. There, of course, are bigger languages. You know, our friends in the PHP community have a bigger language than we do. If actually the loadable object for the core language in PHP is 5 times the size of Perl. But one of the problems with a bigger language is that it's harder to manage it. As developers, it takes more effort. It's harder to learn it. It's harder to make it not broken. And we are not the best core language development community. There are other communities that are much better at core language development. But we're awesome at modules. CPAN is better than anything else on the planet. There is no other language that has a module archive and system that is as amazing as CPAN. And so one of the obvious ways to make Perl a smaller language is to be able to load modules that insert things into the language. So if we have the hooks to let you stick new built-ins into the language from a CPAN module, we have the hooks to let you stick old built-ins into the language from a CPAN module. Which means that it's possible to use our chainsaw to take parts of the Perl core and put them in modules. So this is stuff that might not be part of Perl, the regular language. It's part of stuff it's stuff that is part of Perl, the chainsaw. Perl, the Swiss Army tool that is amazing for sysadmins and amazing to do all kinds of crazy stuff that's not actually part of a programming language. Now, that may sound like I'm saying Perl should just be a programming language and not a chainsaw. Please understand that I used to be a sysadmin. I love the chainsaw. And I'm not talking about taking the stuff and killing it. I'm talking about making it into modules, still shipping them. There's no reason System 5 IPC should be part of the core language. And socket I/O. And Unix users and groups. If you're using Perl on an embedded system, or on Windows, or in some other kind of VM, you don't need the Unix user and group functions. Similarly, there are lots of places where you want a Perl that doesn't have, or you don't need the Unix network info functions, or process management, or formats, or smart batch. or any of a whole bunch of other things. Can you guys tell that I don't like smart match? But so the idea is that if you don't say use v516 at the front of your program, Perl will behave exactly the same as it used to. Any of these things in modules will be auto-loaded behind the scenes, magic. But if you say use v516, maybe some of these don't get auto-loaded, so you have a smaller runtime. You might not know that sys5 stuff is a module. And if you're just developing in Perl, you won't care. It'll work the same. In fact, if we do our job right, you won't know. So that means that we could, if we discover a security problem in formats, we could ship a new version of formats without forcing you to upgrade all of Perl. You could just take that one little update. And sure, in the future, maybe we'll pull some things out. Because everything we take out means that there is more memory available for your programs, which means your VM can do more stuff. Every feature we take out means that the Perl 5 porters, the guys who make Perl, go less crazy. And really, this just means if you want something old that's not core anymore, you might have to say, please give it to me. But only if you say, use v516, or use v518, or use v520. Your existing code should not break. Now, I say all this stuff, and maybe it makes sense, maybe it makes no sense. But of course, there are lots and lots of questions that we don't have answers to yet. If you read the Perl 5 porters mailing list, you will see a very, very long flame war about some of this stuff from last month. But it is possible. So over the past year, we've been moving very, very fast. And we have made some mistakes. There are things I would do different now that I know. So from here, I'm going to be much more careful about which new features I say, oh yeah, bring that in core. That's great. The most important new features I want are the ones that make it possible to have fewer new features. So things that let you write CPAN modules that change Perl, that add new built-ins, that remove things, that change the core's behavior, those are great features. Features that add new keywords to Perl in the core, features that, maybe another threading implementation or something else crazy, less interesting. It's important to me that we have sane defaults. And when I say sane defaults, that's because we have plenty of crazy. There's crazy syntax in Perl. Some of our semantics are special. If you've ever looked at some of the code, the low-level C code or the YAP code in Perl, maybe you lost your sight, maybe you went blind from how bad and scary some of it is. We've got lots of crazy modules. And so a lot of this is really figuring out how to safely and carefully unwind this stuff. So some of the stuff we're doing to help, when you say use v512, that automatically turns on use strict. So what do we do after this? If maybe it's time to use warnings by default. Maybe it's time to have it so that when you try to open a file and it fails, it throws an exception rather than silently returns an error. That could be nice. I like, knowing when things fail, making choices about them. Now, for exceptions, sometimes, one of the things you might do is you might have a whole hierarchy of exceptions like Java. We could spend years building an exception hierarchy. Perl, when things die, we already use strings. So for now, that would be okay. But if we have an exception hierarchy, even better. What else for the future of Perl 5? Maybe 2argopen gone by default. And if we kill 2argopen, because this can be very insecure, very unsafe. If we kill 2argopen, we could kill 1argopen. Has anyone here ever used 1argopen? Dan, okay, someone has. Maybe apostrophe is package separator off by default. You need to use double colons. Maybe Latin 1 autopromote off by default. Maybe UTF-8 everywhere by default. I'd love it if we had a mop in Perl by default. And in fact, Stephen Little is working on just such a thing. If we turn off indirect object syntax by default, a lot of things get a lot easier to parse. But of course, when I say by default, only if you say use v516, use v518, use v520. But it's really important that we make Perl cleaner and simpler and easier. Both for users, folks who are either going to use Perl or Python or Ruby or PHP or JavaScript or Dart or Go. Has Google come up with any other language this week? Google keeps coming up with new languages. It's crazy. But it's also important to make Perl easier for people who are implementing Perl. And that leads into the sort of last little bit here. I want Perl to run everywhere. Everywhere. It used to be that run everywhere means runs on all the operating systems, on all the hardware. That's not interesting in today's world. Because these days, almost every hardware is x86 or ARM. I want Perl to run in every VM. I want Perl to run in every browser. I want Perl to run on every phone. And when I say these things, there are two things people usually tell me. Because there are two reasons why we can't do this. One, there's no spec. If there's no spec, we can't make another implementation. Of course, that meant Ruby. There's only one Ruby, right? It's only that one implementation by Mats in C, not the one in Java or .NET or Smalltalk. So yeah, no spec means can only be one Perl. Then of course, there's this one. Only Perl 5 can parse Perl 5. And it turns out, PPI got pretty close. It's not perfect, but it got pretty close. But once we start getting rid of some of the crazy, crazy syntax and the most ambiguous syntax, maybe it gets a little easier to parse. So I believe that it's important that a desperate hacker be able to go and re-implement a full Perl 5. Maybe not Perl 5.14, maybe not Perl 5.16, maybe not Perl 5.20. But as we evolve a cleaner, clearer Perl, it should be possible for somebody to go and implement Perl.NET, or Java Perl, or Perl in the JavaScript VM, or Perl in Python. I don't care. Perl should run everywhere. Thank you guys so much for listening. Especially, thank you individual sponsors. And I apologize, I've never seen the list of names of individual sponsors who paid to bring me here this year. But thank you guys so much. I appreciate it a lot. I'm thrilled to be able to talk here. And I know I've been talking very fast. I'd be happy to take a couple of questions if people have questions. Yes, Gugad.
So, did the use v syntax thing, like after like say that's done. So when you say use 5.8 or something very old, how do you decouple the core things so that the new curve is actually thinner, but instead of containing like 10 versions of them?
Right. So the question is, with the use v5 syntax and all the old stuff that's from use v5.8, how do we make Perl not gigantic? And so the thing is, for use v5.8, we're not changing how Perl should behave. It should behave like 5.14 did when you said use v5.8. But what we are doing is trying to start to take features out into modules, into loadable, pluggable modules. So if there are features that are only used for older Perls, they'll only get loaded as you load that older Perl. So there'll be this, basically a hierarchy of old implementation modules sitting on the side. And they'll probably be crazy XS code, but they won't necessarily be loaded unless you ask for them. Does that make sense? Will that be coming in the core? We have the first little implementation of this is for Smart Match, and it's been a prototype. The new implementation is written that auto loads on top of the old implementation, but we haven't actually gone and cut the old one out yet. So this is still in the should, not we have done it. I would love next year to be able to come back and say, look, we did it. Okay, another question? Okay, then I'm going, I did promise to talk about the name of Perl 5 because people do keep asking me. They say they want to change the name. Sometimes people say they want to call the language Perl 7. Sometimes they want to call the language Raptor. Sometimes they want to call it other crazy things. It is important that everyone understand that our language is Perl 5. That is what it is called. Perl 6 is our sister. We can't, Larry gets to name things Perl. But I am happy to talk about renaming Perl 5 on one condition. You need to give me a second implementation that passes the same test suite. Don't worry, I got the